retail use cases within Australia and what they actually do this year. So before I do that, what I thought I might start with is just explain the Snyk platform. So we are a platform, we do focus on application security, but one of the things you may have remembered during my talk this morning is application security is more than just open source, more than just your first party priority code that you're actually writing. It's also the IAC files, it's also the container, and it's also the cloud. Right? So we provide a holistic platform, but more importantly, provide full visibility for the business to understand what the current risk posture looks like. We do that with partners as well, but ultimately we own all the vulnerabilities across all the different scans that we do and ensure that each of those vulnerabilities are presented, the risks associated with them, and how to mitigate them. So just think on the numbers if you're interested in, the company was founded I think in 2017. We have 2,500 plus active customers at the moment using the platform. Customers in over 40 different countries. A lot of those countries are within Australia, Pacific, Japan as well. We have 1,200 plus employees. I think it's a little more than that now. But what I find really interesting is that we had 88 million issues fixed in 2022. So our customers are relying on the remediation advice and vulnerability database to actually fix issues, not just be told this is what the problem is. And from a perspective, we're working across multiple different industries. What I'm going to highlight today is a retail industry. I work a lot with FSI as well, so we're very strong in FSI as well. Technology companies like Google, AWS, Atlassian, their partners, they use our vulnerability database, it's trusted, it's a very important component. But we also have, consumer brands like Spotify, CVS Health, Manulife, Afterpay, these are all financial customers, Westpac, financial services customers as well. Across media and across different sectors as well. So ultimately the aim for all our customers is the same. We need to mitigate the risks of the business, in particular ensure that what our consumers are using isn't a vulnerability to our organisation. And more importantly, the data that we collect from our customers is never leaked or potentially given to a third party. And to do that, the developers actually need to take responsibility for that. So I've already showed this slide this morning. I'm just going to quickly highlight that ultimately from a customer perspective, to be successful with application security, we need to be securing the whole software development lifecycle. And so what we mean by that is from the IDE to containers to in Kubernetes, in the cloud, build pipelines, wherever the developers are, we need to be scanning, remediating, prioritizing, and fixing issues. So let me go into this online shopping application, or this is a retail consumer, one of the largest retail customers in Australia actually. So this was their current AppSec pains. They came to us and this is what they told us. So I'm just going to quickly read these out. Developer adoption is only 30%. So what that means is 70% of their code base was not scanned and the developers were not using the current AppSec technology that they had. SaaS code scans were too slow. In fact, that was one of the major reasons why this organisation had poor developer adoption. That was because to run its code scan within the pipeline would delay software being released to production, whether it's new software or updated software. And this was causing friction or redundant within the developers themselves. Too many false positives. This one's interesting because false positives exist in most AppSec tools. No tool produces zero false positives, but they found that to be something that was affecting developer adoption. Developers were skipping application security. No, there wasn't mandated on them, so they would automatically skip it just so they could get the application to production. That was posing a real risk to the business. SDA fixed advice was unreliable. They were told to fix issues that potentially didn't need fixing, and that was causing, again, friction for the developers. They had no IDE scanning capability. So never could the developer scan and look for remediation before they actually committed or ran a PR check. Submitted a PR, for example. They couldn't do that. And there was no way to provide security risks to the business across all their applications. And the main reason for that, the adoption was low. Too many vulnerabilities to fix one by one. They had all these vulnerabilities out of the 30% of the applications that were scanned. They didn't really know where to start. It was just too slow, too time consuming. They just couldn't move forward with their current asset tool. So this customer purchased 2 products. We do have actually 4 products. They purchased Snyk Code and Snyk Open Source. They saw this as the most important place to start. And the reason I focus on these is they almost go hand in hand, because developers are always writing code, and they do that by writing code to the business logic that they have. But at the same time, no developer wants to write too much business logic, so we already know the power of the open source community, and we know that if we leverage those open source libraries, 80% of the code won't have to be written, and we can leverage that. As a result of that, we need some sort of scanning capabilities to protect our assets, and that means we need to protect the code itself. So the current use case, securing code and open source software pipelines with Snyk scanning. Every single pipeline had to run a Snyk scan and had to pass a certain security gate. Integrating application security into the software development lifecycle with a small security team. If you remember the presentation that I brought up this morning, you may have 1, 2, 3 AppSec members, but you could have 2,000 developers. See the difference here? How do we roll out security as part of what the developers do with such a small security team? And continuous monitoring and reporting on the current risk exposure. It's not enough just to shift left and scan and fix all your issues. The business needs to know at all times what the risk assessment looks like. And the main reason for this is being brought up multiple times at this conference. And Log4j is just one of those, and it was a Java vulnerability. Understanding exactly where that needs to be fixed from the moment that fix hit vulnerability databases is really critical to ensuring that the business is safe and secure as quickly as possible. So I'm going to start with SCM integration. And the reason I start here is because this one's the most important to the business. So this major retailer use 2 different source code management, Azure repos, and they use GitHub Enterprise as well. Now, both GitHub Enterprise was not public facing, Azure repos was. So part of the use case was how do we access these source code management systems and see what our vulnerability assessment looks like at all times. And what we mean by that is we don't just scan once. As new commits occur, as new PRs are created, or just daily, we will constantly scan to give the business an assessment of not only what the security posture looks like now, but what's being fixed over time. And the vulnerability may only be medium or high today, but as a mature exploit exists for that open source vulnerability, it all of a sudden becomes critical. And so if the dev hasn't fixed it early on, the business needs to understand what hasn't been fixed. This is a really important concept. This integration into source code management is the heart of where the business and the AppSec team can identify what needs to be fixed and why. And the other good thing about integrating into source code management systems is we can run PR checks. We can look for new vulnerabilities that are introduced through new changes. We can block in source code management if we want to. As new code is written, we can compare against previous code scan and determine what new vulnerabilities are coming from a Snyk code perspective or SaaS perspective. Has someone introduced a new SQL injection or a cross-site scripting issue, which wasn't previously there, but they've written a new block of code and now it exists. Really important concept. And also by integrating into source code management, this major retailer was automatically creating pull requests for issues that had a fix. And so the developer then can go back, look at that, test it, merge it, and roll it back into the main branch. Really, really important. So if you look at what it looks like from a Snyk perspective, when we scan a repository, and this could be a monorepo, but when we scan a repository, we're actually looking for different artifacts. What do I mean by that? The open source libraries are brought in through a manifest file. Of course, we've spoken about unmanaged open source libraries as well. But typically in today's world, they're brought in through a manifest, through a package manager. So we scan that. We can scan the code because the code's sitting in the repository. We can scan that as well. Sure, we can scan Docker files, IAC, but this major retailer wasn't using that. But what's more important here is each of these individual scans poses a different risk to the business. An open source scan versus a SaaS scan are two different types of scan. And what's really important to understand here is an open source scan is the open source library and the vulnerability in the library. A SaaS scan is the code that has been written by the developer. So by getting a clear distinction between the two two types of scans, the business as well as the developers can come into this portal and have a look at exactly what the security posture looks like without the two scans getting mixed together. And ultimately, when we're creating pull requests and when we're analysing the vulnerabilities, the more detail that this major retailer was able to get, the more the developer adoption started to take place. Because now the developers are armed with the information that they need to make an informed decision on how to fix it. And one of the good things about the source code management integration that this customer was found really beneficial, even if the developers decided to run 0 scans, they decided they weren't going to run any scans in the IDE. By default, the business is scanning every application, every day, on every commit, even without them running a scan. And we're creating pull requests for them on their behalf to fix those open source vulnerabilities as well. So when we look at it from an SCM integration here, when we run a code scan, we do something very similar to the open source scan and provide a nice visual cue of exactly where the code vulnerability is. And when we actually scan from a code perspective, we actually build an event graph of the code. And what we're looking for with this event graph is sources and sinks. So Woolworths, or this major retailer now, I've already said it, was actually using this to determine the flow from how a user would come in through maybe a mobile web app on an input form into the actual underlying vulnerability. It could be a cross-site scripting issue, it could be a SQL injection, and was able to pinpoint exactly where they need to fix this in the code, but more importantly, was able to actually understand what the fix required and some remediation advice. There's no real value to this retail organisation if all we're telling it is you have a SQL injection in this line and we're not going to tell you how to fix it. Because that means that the developer adoption is going to suffer as a result. Instead, the developers are armed with that information and get the remediation advice directly on the SCM integration. Again, the developer didn't have to do anything, this is all given to him once the repositories have been imported. And so I showed you this one as well, that ability to create a pull request, and that pull request will simply change the open source version from one to another. Now, this retailer told me that one of the most frustrating aspects with their previous open source scanning capability is that it would constantly upgrade the library from version 1, for example, to version 10. But ultimately, when they did that, the developers would more often than not need to actually refactor their code because the library's changed. Multiple iterations of that library occurred, so it's changed. But what was really beneficial for them is Snyk was able to upgrade to the closest possible version to the library that was had the vulnerability, hence ensuring that the possibility of refactoring was really, really low. And at the same time, any open source fix that we provided through a pull request, we guarantee that no new vulnerabilities are coming in. Again, this all helps with the developer adoption. But there's one other thing that this source code management did for this major retailer. They were able to scan 100% of their code base by scanning just all the repositories in Azure repos and in GitHub Enterprise without the developer running a single scan. So So this is the power of what this software, the value that this software was giving to the business, and then giving them the ability to remediate and fix and doing what they needed to be done by creating those pull requests for them. IDE integration. This was a really important use case that this retail organisation wanted to achieve. They wanted the developers to be able to scan from their IDE or wherever they're building it could be using Vim, as we spoke about before. They could just use the CLI and run a Snyk test or a Snyk code test. They wanted them to be testing and scanning before they submitted their changes back into the source code manager. And the good thing about that is if they've got to circle back and come to the developers to actually fix their security vulnerabilities and they don't have armed with this IDE integration, for example, what happens is the cost to the business becomes magnitude. All of a sudden the developer has to be taken away from what he was doing previously to fix this security vulnerability because he wasn't able to scan it previously. So our integration supports many different IDEs, and so the ones that this major retailer were using, VS Code, IntelliJ, I think they were using PyCharm as well. So that ability for every developer to be able to scan through the IDE was a really important value statement for this organisation. Now what does scanning in the IDE do? I run a scan, but one of the things that's really good about it is I can run a scan whenever I'm ready, because I know the scan's going to be quick, and more importantly, the remediation advice and everything I need to know to fix the issue is given to me in my IDE. And more often than not, I speak to customers and tell me my old app set tooling will scan, but it makes it really difficult for my developers to fix it where they are. And this is one of the critical components that this retailer found real value from Snyk as a result of that. So we run scans before the code is even committed. That was one of their major checkpoints that they needed to do. We receive remediation advices. Example fixes are available in the IDE as well. They will see exactly how others have fixed issues out. Because we actually, as part of our AI machine learning, we actually scan open source repositories, very popular open source repositories, and we learn from those to ensure that we provide remediation advice that would and should fix that issue. A really important concept. Pipeline integration. Now, if they're scanning in the IDE, that's fantastic, but have they fixed what they're scanning in the IDE? This becomes the next level of integration that was really important to this major retailer. And so, one of the major CI/CD tools that they use is Azure DevOps. They also use GitHub Actions as well, as you can imagine if you're GitHub. Azure DevOps from a pipeline, Azure pipelines, makes sense from an Azure perspective. But here they want to run scans. They wanted to ensure that every scan that ran articulated from an HTML report what was the outcome of that scan during the pipeline. And then they could make decisions as to if we have critical vulnerabilities, we're going to block this build from going forward. But more importantly, only block if we have a fix. If we don't have a fix, we don't want to block the users. But instead, we want to alert them that this vulnerability exists and it's something that we should look at as soon as a fix is available. And so they were able to do this using a plugin that's available in Azure DevOps. But even if they don't use the plugin, GitHub Actions has the ability to run Snyk tests as well. Is they could easily just embed the CLI into any. So that some of their developers were actually using Jenkins as well, so they can into any CI/CD tool. And you can see here, as a result of running a code scan, they can get a report directly in Azure pipelines. So the business or anyone could understand at any point in time when this pipeline ran and this functionality made its way into production, this is what the security assessment looked like. And this is really important for them. The last one is reporting. Again, this is really important because the business at any point in time needs to understand exactly what the threat assessment looks like from an open source and code perspective as well. And so, as part of the reporting capability, what we do is provide a number of different dashboards that report on various different aspects. For example, in our reporting dashboard, Woolworths were able to select open source issues, by clicking the checkbox, they were able to select open source issues that were specific CVEs, and they were able to select open source issues which are more mature exploits out in the wild. When they get that fine list, they're able to then give those all to the developers and say these issues must be fixed because they present a risk to the business. And that ability to be able to capture that data, filter on that data, is a really important concept for an organisation to be successful with AppSec. They use Jira, they were logging Jira tickets, they were doing that throughout the software development lifecycle. But ultimately the business at any point in time needs to be able to ask the question, what risk do we have at the moment to the business based on what hasn't been fixed right now? And also zero-day vulnerabilities that appear. You need to be able to go back into a reporting portal to understand which assets, which open source projects, which code files need to be fixed to be able to alleviate that problem. So one thing you should be noticing here is that our tooling fits into exactly where the developers are. We scan container registries, Kubernetes, cloud, we scan IDs, we scan pipelines. This is where modern organizations need to do their scans. So we can generate some graphs as well. Most of our customers, including this major retail customer, actually used our reporting API to get that data out, and I think they used BigQuery, Google's BigQuery, to actually go and do some statistical analysis on the data as well. And one of the major reasons they wanted to do that was to understand from the data how many issues were being fixed, what does their vulnerability posture look like at any point in time, what value were they getting out of the Snyk platform to be able to understand whether or not the tooling was meeting their needs to reduce their security posture and their risk assessment. And they can do that because that data is all available at any time. Not only do we track vulnerabilities, not only do we provide remediation, we also look at what's being fixed and when. And we do that because we're integrating into source code management. Again, all of these integrations that I talked to you about are integrations that are important to the business, important to the AppSec team, so that they can report back to the business what impact this software is having to producing more secure software than previously. And that's a really important factor. It's a basic scenario around a return on investment. I'm using this tool. How are my developers fixing it? Are they getting the remediation? And what has, over time, what's the impact to the business as a result of that? So the reports area has different compliance reports. This is actually getting better. This major retailer is working with us to actually improve some of the capabilities that we have in our reporting. So we're very flexible. One of the things we do with our customers is take their input and drive product direction based on what their needs are. Right? So one of the things we've done, which this major retailer was a big advocate of, was to be able to write custom rules. That's where you can influence the rule set when you run a SaaS scan to meet the needs of your organisation. And one classic example is, are we making sure, because we're capturing credit card information as part of the payment process, are we making sure that that credit card information or any password are not logged, for example, throughout the code into the logging files themselves, right? And that can be done by writing a custom rule. So these are really important concepts. So in summary, as a result of using Snyk, this retail organisation started pretty strong. So I think they've got 3,500 developers just in Australia. They started with 2,000 developers, but ultimately already used the 3,500 developers. But what they wanted to do, and some of the highlights in terms of using the software, and I just want to summarise these for you. They were Snyk scanning results remediation for 2,000 developers were all being serviced through the product. They were getting few false positives reported in the previous scanning capability. I mean, this is what they told me. They didn't have zero false positives, but the scanning capability was producing far fewer false positives, which was helping with developer adoption. They were also set up policy management that if there were false positives, how we can remove those false positives, remove the noise, so that developers are focusing on what's the most important fixes they should be fixing, all the ones that make sense to the business themselves. Security integrated into the source code management system was a really big one for them, which enabled automatic dependency and code scanning at all times. No one needed to say, I need to do a scan now. It was always happening repetitively every 24 hours. And that was able to reduce the exposure risk to the business because the developers were then getting pull requests created should they not have fixed it before they merged their code back into the source code management. Useful metrics and improved visibility. One of the real problems this retail organisation had, they could never report back to the business what the security posture looked like, even though they were previously scanning with the current, the former app security capabilities. So this was really important. The ability to tell the business at any time what's being fixed, what currently exists, or what's our security posture look like in the event of a zero-day vulnerability was really important to them. And obviously security into the whole software development lifecycle. They want to develop the scans in the IDE, they want to scans in the pipelines, they want to scans in container registries as well. One of the things is they never actually bought Snyk Container, they're talking to us about Snyk Container now. But what they noticed is those open source vulnerabilities and code vulnerabilities, if they weren't fixed, they were making their way into the container. So as a result of that, container scanning will surface the fact that these haven't been fixed. Again, really important to the business to understand what their security posture and risk looks like. So we actually ran a Snyk customer value survey, and I know I owe you this, because we spoke yesterday about giving you that Snyk value survey. But what we did is we interviewed all of our customers in 2022 globally, and we asked them what value were they deriving from the Snyk platform and what did it mean to the business to purchase this software and were they getting a return on investment. You know, this is some of the metrics that these metrics are publicly available on our website. We don't shy from these. Developer productivity, like organisations with like $327,000 was saved from an ROI perspective because of the fact that the scanning capability was happening far earlier than what it was before, but more importantly, the remediation was happening while the developers were writing the code. Much faster from the scanning perspective, so the scanning capability was faster, so they were able to implement it into the software development lifecycle without slowing down or marginally slowing down the release of their software. That was really, really important as well. So there's many others here as well, so you can have a look at those on the screen now. So any questions on that? Ultimately, every organisation, whether it's a retail, whether it's a FSI, the risk exposure to them is customer-facing applications that then can result in major loss or damage for an organisation. And they need to ensure that these applications that are running in production have the fewer amount of vulnerabilities, but more importantly, understand what the risk looks like should a zero-day vulnerability appear. And to do that, you need really good AppSec tooling that can alert you of that. Any questions?
질문 있으실까요? 편하게 질문하셔도